Today we're going to be looking at the ways in which social media impacted on the UK's Brexit or EU membership referendum. We are also going to be looking at an introduction to the concept of e-voting and the arguments for and against digital democracy.
When it comes to e-voting, it is another way of placing a vote, but instead it can be done online. From a range of internet services, it can also mean having an electronic voting machine located at the different polling stations. In this day and age, e-voting is still not recognized and used in many countries due to the fact that policymakers, for example the state and federal governments, do not make it a top priority in their agenda to change. There are more important national priorities which they need to tackle first, for example the economy, national security issues and climate, before making e-voting a top priority. Some countries which have implemented the electronic voting system to speed up the elections as technology advances are countries like Brazil.
As well as the arguments for e-voting, it is important to assess the problems which it may cause. There are many risks associated with the internet and technology in general in relation to their safety against hacking or viruses. Essentially, security is the main threat, and we could see many ballots being tampered with in order to gain a particular result or outcome. Although the security threats of hacking are mainly directed towards the use of personal computers, it will still pose a threat inside polling stations if offenders were able to break through any safeguards they may have. Ballot secrecy is also a major aspect when we talk about the safety of e-voting. Computers or devices which are unprotected and are used in public places may be an easy target for hackers who could leak details of the way in which a person has voted, violating their privacy rights. Also, if the servers were to crash, there may be a loss of data which isn't backed up, which could then lead to inaccuracy of results if not dealt with in the correct manner. In terms of access, it needs to be available for everyone on the wider scale. E-voting is said to cause a potential digital divide between people who have the technology in order to vote online and for those who do not. It is also said there may be a divide in the economic backgrounds of the voters, as people with a faster connection will tend to pay a higher price. Not everyone will be able to afford such things, so e-voting may become a concept that is affected by the socio-economic variables. It can be said that the internet and telephone voting may offer new threats in terms of fraud and coercion, or simply people buying votes. Fraud in voting is defined as using another identity without their permission to vote for a certain person or cause, whereas coercion is where a voter may be bought off or pressured into voting for a certain person or cause. The integrity of the ballot is important, as every voter needs to present their own opinion without having an influence from outside parties. It is simply harder to identify a person if they are voting online due to hacking of digital passwords and signatures. The government will need to demonstrate proper usage of e-voting service and will need to allocate funds towards advertisements. These will ensure that large amounts of the population will be able to correctly use the service. Privatisation will have its effect on e-voting because of the distrust it may cause between the public and the government. The government may give control to a hired firm, which may affect many people's ethical beliefs when it comes to voting. The whole concept of e-voting is a real technological advancement for humanity, and the idea itself can be beneficial in many ways. But the disconnection of human contact may spell the beginning of a world where contact is unnecessary and will then affect the future society.
Moving on to the benefits, there are many benefits in the argument of if e-voting should be implemented for once and for all, and are very easy and clear to understand why it will be a major advantage for countries to implement the online service. It will make the voting process easier and more accessible for electors. Voters will be able to vote online from any computer or telephone with an internet connection. By implementing these methods, it will substantially lower the cost of voting, as there wouldn't be much paper needed and there wouldn't be that many polling stations eventually, as a large number of the public would be voting from home, therefore resulting in the possibility to eliminate long lineups at polling stations. E-voting will also benefit those with disability, those suffering with illness, those serving in the military or living abroad, also those away on personal travel or single parents who will find it hard to visit a traditional polling station, as they can now vote from home at any time they want. E-voting is a system which can be used to attract young people aged 18 to 30 to vote, as they are considered harder to reach and will be more interested in voting online rather than visiting a polling station. There would be more secrecy in voting online for people with disability, as they would be voting unassistedly, so securing their vote with a greater degree of privacy. By voting over the internet and telephone, the election results would be able to be collected faster and more accurately, as the votes would be counted through a program online which collects the data online and produces the results. Ultimately, the biggest advantage with the internet and telephone voting is that it would improve the whole ballot cast, as it would eliminate ballot errors from the elections, therefore giving precise data permanently.
Although there are positives and negatives for e-voting, we believe that it should be a way of voting, as it will introduce the younger generations to vote and show them how easily it can be done. It will also attract more people to be interested in politics, as it will encourage them to research what they're voting online for before casting their vote.
Social media is not just a platform used in which you can communicate with friends and family all over the globe. It is a platform that allows you to interconnect with strangers from all over. In more recent times, whenever a historic moment has happened, ordinary people have taken to the likes of Twitter and Facebook to voice their opinion on a matter. However, this also means that the opinions in which people voice have been challenged by others, which has then progressed onto hostile attitudes and hate for one another's opinion. The Brexit campaign was one that had sparked a lot of divided opinions because of its underlying tone of racist factors. People have voted Brexit for many different reasons. Some have voted to leave as they believe that the public services such as the NHS were being abused by those not born in the UK, and that waiting to be treated was taking longer due to this reason. However, others voted leave because they believed that immigration was a huge dilemma facing this country, although this logic was unfortunately associated with racism, and this can be seen on certain tweets that became immediately alarming. One tweet read, "Young woman in the street stops to tell me she's been verbally abused for speaking Spanish on her phone," and another which said, "This weekend, I and my family have witnessed 3 when are you going home racist incidents aimed at EU citizens here." This shows that people from different European backgrounds were being targeted and racially abused. During and after the whole EU referendum, there were many racist incidents that happened in various different communities around the UK, some of which were captured on video and uploaded to social media platforms like Twitter. Here, the videos of people verbally abusing others because of where they come from or how they look became very viral quickly. There were some people who agreed with what was being said on these videos, which again caused arguments via the internet. However, these videos ultimately helped people become more aware on the impacts the EU referendum had on some minorities. An example of this would be when 3 young men racially abused a fellow passenger on the tram in Manchester. The video itself received over 1,000 retweets in less than a day. After the results were announced, the hashtag Independence Day post-Brexit became visible over Twitter and used around 65,000 times. However, part of it was because people were optimistic on a better future for themselves and their lifestyle here in Britain, and others used it as a slogan that meant that it was time for those who were not British to leave, and again used in hateful tweets. Furthermore, many celebrities who voiced their opinion on the matter and openly explained that they wanted to stay in the EU were immediately met with hostile tweets against them. People explained that they weren't living middle-class lives and don't understand the day-to-day influence the EU has on Britain.
How did social media impact the Leave vote in the EU referendum, also known as Brexit? The EU referendum for Britain was a vote taken to decide whether or not we stayed a part of the EU. Voters decided that we would leave the EU, meaning that the Vote Leave campaign had been successful. This is because of a campaign which had a strong social media presence. After researching on Twitter, it is easy to find a Twitter page with the username @vote_leave, which even after several months of the vote happening, still has 65.8k followers. This particular page has posted 1,534 photos and videos, 7,190 tweets, has links to an official Vote Leave website, and has followed 480 other Twitter accounts. A page of this size will be sure to have a large audience of not just their followers, but the followers of followers, as well because of the retweet capability of Twitter. Another big example of a large social media impact on the Leave side of the vote is the United Kingdom Independence Party, also known as UKIP. Their Twitter site has 155k followers. Social media impacted the Vote Leave campaign by allowing the people who were running it to give out relative, quick and useful information to people who will likely listen, as they have followed, joined or subscribed to the account putting out the information. Another impact social media had on the Brexit vote from the side of the Leave campaign is that after a post had been made, whether it was on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram or YouTube or a different social media platform, they would get responses quickly. A member of the campaign could look down the comment section of the post and see the reaction this information could be used to influence future posts and decisions made for the campaign team. Along with sites, there were celebrities that supported the Leave campaign. Examples of this include former footballer Sol Campbell, who argued that Brexit would increase young British sporting talent. On Twitter, celebrity John Cleese tweeted about Brexit, and he's got 5.5 million followers, with his tweet getting 6,000 responses. With a Twitter following of 5.5 million, this is going to have a large reach and have a big impact on the Brexit vote from a social media standpoint.
In the week leading up to the EU referendum, it was safe to say that it was the hot topic of conversation on all types of social media. 3 days before the referendum had begun, there were 2 million social media mentions on the topic. This, in comparison to the previous weeks, was a huge increase in tweets, statuses, and any other way of communicating through social media. The comparison. Now, the comparison of hashtags used does not reflect the true nature of these tweets, as voters may have had different intentions for using the hashtag. For example, a user could be completely against the Leave campaign and tweet about it, therefore giving the Leave hashtag more tweets as a whole. This could be one of the reasons why the Leave hashtag was used a significant amount more than the Remain. Looking further into these stats, the Remain tweets had a higher number of positive tweets using the hashtag Remain. The Leave hashtag was getting a lot more tweets, but a huge proportion of these tweets were very negative tweets. On the day of the referendum, we saw a humongous number of 3.5 million posts on social media. These posts were in fact very negative. 77% of these posts were against the prospect of leaving the EU. Age was one huge statistic that played a huge part in the EU referendum, as many analysers came to the conclusion relatively quickly that the younger generation of voters voted Remain. These stats show on Twitter regarding the fact that the Remain hashtag had more positively related tweets and the Leave hashtag had less positive tweets and more negative. It is claimed that the vote count percentage in age went as such: 18 to 24-year-olds, 75% voted Remain; 25 to 49-year-olds, 56% voted Remain; 50 to 64-year-olds, 44% voted Remain; and 65 plus, 39% voted Remain. The top 4 political voices in the EU referendum were David Cameron, Jeremy Corbyn, Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage. On the Remain side was David Cameron with 1.54 million followers, 267,000 mentions, 16% of those being positive mentions. Jeremy Corbyn was the second most popular political voice on the Remain side of the debate, with only 9% positive mentions back, although Jeremy Corbyn was not hugely active on Twitter during the referendum. On the Leave side was Boris Johnson with 114,000 mentions, 21% positive feedback back, and Nigel Farage with 177,000 mentions and 21% positive mentions back. Judging by these results, the Leave political figures constructed, their tweets are a lot more effective and potentially could have had an impact on the overall campaign result. Overall, social media has had a big part to play in the EU referendum, as it has enabled each user to get their view on the debate across and perhaps persuade others to join them in their decisions, especially celebrities and role models.